Good morning everyone. Myself Dr. Rashami Gupta, Assistant Professor, Computer Science Department, Pandit Sundar Lal Sarma, Open University. Today I am going to give a presentation on object-oriented programming with C++. In this presentation, we will understand the evolution from the procedure programming to the object-oriented programming and how this programming paradigm shaped the modern software development. In today's lecture, we will cover the overview of the programming language, procedure-oriented programming language, difference between the procedure and the object-oriented programming, and the various programming paradigm. By the end of the session, you will clearly understand why the object-oriented programming is powerful and widely used. In this slide, I will explain what is programming language. A programming language is a set of instructions used to implement the task. When we write these instructions, it is called the program. Programmer use the different programming language to perform the computational task. Actually, the programming language are broadly classified into the three types. First is the machine level language, second is the assembly level language, and third is the high level language. Let me discuss one by one in each slide what is machine level language, what is assembly language, and what is high level language. First, let me explain what is machine level language. Machine language is a lowest level language and it consists of the binary numbers 0 and 1. It is directly executed by the CPU. The main advantage is the speed, but the disadvantage is that it is very difficult for the human to understand and write. It is machine dependent. Second, assembly level language. It is a low level language and it is slightly closer to the human beings and it uses the mnemonic code like add, subtraction, move. However, it is still considered low level because it is very close to the hardware. Now, what is high level language? High level language are easier to read, write and understand. They are closer to the human beings and independent of the hardware. Example of the high level language are C, C++, Fortran, Java, COBOL. These language made the programming easier and more efficient. Now, the high level language are broadly classified into two categories. First is the procedure oriented programming and second is the object oriented programming. Let me discuss one by one what is procedure and what is object oriented. In this slide, let me explain what is procedure oriented programming. The problem is viewed as a sequence of things to do such as reading, calculation and printing. Actually, in procedure oriented programming, the problem is viewed as a sequence of the task and the focus is on writing the function to perform the operations like reading, calculation and printing. The main idea here is to do the task step by step. Programming, so we can say that in procedure oriented programming, the problems or programs are divided into the functions. Now, let me discuss in this slide the characteristics of procedure oriented programming. In this, the emphasis is on doing thing or in algorithms. The functions share the global data, that means the data moves freely around or between the function. It uses the top-down approach. Actually, the procedure-oriented programming is simple but has some limitations. What are the limitations? Let me discuss in this slide. Limitations of procedure-oriented programming. First, actually in procedure-oriented programming, it focus on the algorithm, not data. That means the data moves freely up openly around the system. In second, it is a poor scalability. It changes the effect the entire program. And in third, we can say that it is a global data risk because the most functions share the global data making data vulnerable to unintended modifications. Fourth, weak real world modeling. It does not represent the real world exactly what it says in entities properly. Now, we just overcome for this procedure oriented programming and uses the new concept, that is the object oriented programming. In object oriented programming, a problem is divided into the object, and each object contains the data, functions, and data is hidden from outside. In procedure oriented programming, we see that data is moved freely around the system. Here, objects communicate with each other. That means data and functions are bind with each other, and if we want to access, we just take the object, and it uses the bottom up approach. We see that the in procedure oriented programming it uses the top down approach, but here we uses the bottom up approach. Now let me discuss the characteristics of object oriented. Just as I already told you that it emphasizes on data rather than procedures, and programs are divided into the objects. Datas are designers such that they are characterized by the object, and here the data is hidden that cannot be accessed by the outside world. If we want to access, just we take the communicate with the different object, not with the data directly. Now here we see the difference between the procedures and object oriented programming. Here we see that there is a global data. That means the global data can access any of the local data. And here data and functions are bind up together and make an object. And we cannot access data directly here. So in procedure oriented, if we talk about the again comparison between the procedure and the object oriented programming, procedures oriented programming is focused on algorithms. Here it focuses on the data and objects. Here data move freely, and here the data is hidden and protected. It uses the top down approach, procedure oriented programming, and in object oriented programming it uses the bottom up approach. It is hard to scale and maintain, here modular and reusable. Poor for the real world modeling, here models the real world problem as well. Now we discuss the advantages of the object oriented programming. The first is the reusability. That means the object and classes can be reused across the multiple programs without modification. Second, maintainability. Modular structures makes the large program easier to manage, debug and extend. Third is data security. Here, encapsulation protects the data from the accidental modification by the outside functions. And the fourth one is the real world modeling. It supports the real world problem as well. That means it is close to the real world problems and make decisions accordingly. Now, let me discuss one of the problems that one of the programs, one of the language of C++. C++ is an object-oriented programming language. It was developed by the AT&T laboratories. It was created by Jarnes Straudus in the early 1980s. Originally, it was called the C with the classes, and later it was renamed with the C++, or we can say that C++ is a superset of C. Almost every C program is valid in C++. Now in this slide, let me explain what is a programming paradigm. A programming paradigm is an approach or a style of programming. There are two major paradigms. First is the procedure oriented, that is used in C, COBOL, Fortran. And third is the object oriented programming, that is used in C++, Java and Python. Now what are the basic concepts of the object oriented programming? There are different concepts of the object oriented programming, such as class, inheritance, classes, objects, encapsulation, message passing, data binding, encapsulation, inheritance. Some of them are let me discuss first what is class. Class is nothing but it is a blueprint for creating an object. Now what is an object? An object is an instance of the class and it's within who own data and function. And if we talk about the encapsulation, encapsulation means the hiding the data and functions or binding the data and functions together, and just it hides the internal detail. And what is inheritance? Inheritance, it is a class hierarchy also so that the one class can inherit the properties of the other classes. Now, what are the applications of the object-oriented programming? Object-oriented programming is widely used in enterprise systems such as ERPs and CRM, software development, game development, simulation and engine, mobile applications, Android and iOS applications. AI and simulations, for AI and simulation, we use the modeling real world problems. As we know, today's we generally use the AI problems. Because of these application, object oriented programming dominates the software industries today. Thank you.